Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
Hey, youth workers, how you doing today? This is Doug again, and today we're going to talk about something that's similar to what we talked about before. Before, we talked about something called Just Show Up. Came from Jack Larson, who was a missionary, who ran student missions for decades, first for Youth for Christ, and then he developed his own called World Servants. Also mentored Maury Buchanan, who is twice on this podcast. You can look up Maury. And here we'll talk about Jack some here and there, but a lot about mission discovery. But Jack showed up to church one time to do a sermon, and he went to church with us for a while. They lived in different parts of the country, he and his family. And the program was called, or the sermon was called Just Show Up. So we've talked about that earlier, and if you consistently listen, you know about that. But today comes from a devotional that I've been reading, and it's called Keep Showing Up. I thought that was just really unique to kind of hit because we've talked about just show up. And so here's the scripture that was used, 1 Corinthians 15:58. My beloved brothers and sisters, be firm, immovable, always excelling in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. There's something about showing up when you don't feel like showing up. Now, if you grew up in an entrepreneurial family like mine, my dad was a builder. My mom did different jobs to try to keep insurance floating and those sort of things. So she contributed a whole lot while raising four of his kids. Dad was a builder since he was 12 years old. At 11, he bought his first piece of land. Long story there. Go listen to some of my episodes. You'll probably figure that out. But keep showing up is something that we were taught as children. It didn't matter how you felt, didn't matter what you were thinking. You finish your task. You finish whatever job it is you're doing. You don't stop. You just keep showing up. And eventually you'll get the things that you're wanting to get or get done what you want to get done. So here's what this devotional says. I can't say it any better. Hard days will come. People will try your patience. What you work for won't happen the way you hoped it would. But the deal is this. If we keep showing up, keep our focus on the prize, what are we looking for? What are we trying to accomplish? And don't let those side items, those influences, those people, there's always people. Nehemiah, if you read the book of Nehemiah, it is excellent with this point about keep showing up. Because there's people in your life that will try to get you off track. You're doing so good here. Let's try this over here. Come here and help us. And some of them with good intentions and some with bad intentions. Some your friends and some your enemies. In Nehemiah, the case was, it was his enemies. There were also people that were friends and that were in Israel or Jerusalem at that time. They were building the wall. It had been torn down. The wall's going to end up like half its size. And some will be upset about that. But in a record amount of time, it took years for them to build the original wall. It took months for them to build this next wall that was torn down and through the captivity of Israel. And Nehemiah is like, he's there. He's the cupbearer for the king. And he's the guy who's sent in. But there's these other guys that are trying to say, hey, come on down here and talk to us for a while. Let's talk about what you're doing. And Nehemiah came up with a great phrase, and that was, I'm doing a great work, and I cannot come down. And each time, he didn't go to tell him himself. He sent a servant. He sent somebody, that was in the messenger crew, and he would go to him, and they were very frustrated and very upset because their deal was to get him to stop. In fact, the real deal was, if we can get him alone, we're going to kill him to make sure this thing doesn't happen. I don't know what they were thinking. This guy is seen by the king on a regular basis when he's back in the kingdom, and he's going to be going back there. And if he doesn't show up, they're going to be in trouble. So who knows what they're thinking? Who knows what the people in your life are going to be thinking? But your task is to keep your eye on the prize and to keep showing up. Jack said, just show up. That's a first step. But when you know what you need to be doing and you know where you need to be going, keep showing up. For 6 years, I kept showing up with Youth for Christ in campus life, even though I didn't want to, because for the first 3 years, I was a fish out of water, had no idea what I was doing. But God kept saying, keep going, get up. Come on, you got to go again. And God would bring me refreshings no matter how bad I felt. Well, by the time I got to Trinity, the church I stayed at for 29 years, I was fired up. I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew where we were going. And so my wife and I had laser focus, and we kept moving forward. We kept showing up, and we didn't let side attractions get to us. Now, it didn't mean that we didn't fall. It didn't mean that in those 29 years we didn't think about doing other things. We did. And people were so kind to us, but there were always these few people that were trying to sidetrack us, trying to get us off focus, try to get us to be fired, tried to get us to quit. And in one case, I said, God, I'm ready to go. We're ready to quit. And he said, but will you stay? And reluctantly, I said, yes, God, I'll stay. And so we kept moving forward, and those people went to the wayside, and our focus stayed the same, and God kept blessing and blessing and blessing. When you keep showing up, people realize that you're motivated, that there's movement. And there were people, one by the name of Jim Halstead, who's also been interviewed by me not long ago. He was praying for us for many of those years because he saw the motivation and the movement in our ministry and our passion. I didn't know that. Until just a year ago when he and I talked. We hadn't seen each other in probably a decade or more. And we talked about the years that he prayed for us. Now, there were other people praying, but he saw the passion. He said, I need to pray for these people because this is amazing. And I was very grateful to hear that. But there was a time and period where we were running 70 middle schoolers, 70 high schoolers separately. We ran them separately. We were running anywhere from 30 to 40 college students, not every week, because they were coming from out of state. They were coming from different places. They'd be there on the weekend. They'd show up for retreats. But we had those guys because they knew we cared about them and believed in them, even though they weren't there. But some of them were, and they became our staff. But this guy was praying for us. Why? Because we kept showing up. So whatever it is that God's got you to do, keep showing up. Don't stop. No matter what people are saying, no matter how you feel, get up each day. Go to bed each night going, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to do it tomorrow, but if you will help me, if you'll help me get up, if you'll help me put one step in front of the other, we'll keep going on. By the way, there were days that all I could do was put one foot in front of the other for weeks and months. There were days that I didn't even know if I could finish a day. But there were months and years where it was like we are just on fire. And God is just doing something here, and we can't stop because we kept showing up even though others tried to discourage us. Put around you people who will encourage you, people who will keep helping you to show up, people who will keep showing up with you. We had staff that showed up for 20 years, 25 years of the 29. It was absolutely amazing. We were astounded at their stayability when the average youth worker volunteer lasts about a year. So keep showing up, be firm, immovable, always excelling in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. 1 Corinthians 15:58. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.